Connor was able to achieve a 48-inch vertical after 4 years of ATG training. Today he's going to show us how he got there.
Every time when working out, I always like to start with either a backwards treadmill or reverse sled, because one of the biggest limiters to jumping high is having pain in your knees. And what we found with ATG and training is the most simple way to start reversing out your knee pain is with some level of backwards walking. It's a very short form of knee bend, and it does a really good job warming you up before any other intense exercises, which is what I do when I train like a squat or an RDL. So doing this for like 5 to 10 minutes till you get a good quad pump is typically what I recommend starting with every workout.
That makes sense. And right now, you have pretty nice size distance steps. If someone's feeling pain by doing it with that speed and that distance of steps, what would you recommend doing?
So for one, what's nice about these is you could lower the resistance of our treadmill, which will just make it so you don't have to push as hard into the treadmill, but also simply just walking backwards. Always recommend having a friend or something you can hold on to for safety. Even if that's too difficult, going into a pool gives a lower level of resistance, which is actually what we've had many clients do and see success with for introducing themselves to pain-free knee ability.
Good.
So after I do the reverse sled, I enjoy doing my training from the ground up. And an often neglected area most people avoid is training their tibialis. So I like doing sets of tib raises. And when starting the tib raise, I find using a tib bar is a great way to overload this muscle, but also give you a number to shoot for and makes it more measurable. A lot of people don't know with jumping is right before you do your jump, your tibia is under a lot of strain because you're decelerating into your jump. So you can only imagine a car without having brakes. If you're not able to decelerate into a jump, it puts a lot more pressure into your knees. So it's not necessarily a muscle that's going to help you jump higher, but it's one that will allow you to jump higher because it's going to allow you to put more force into your jump. And a typical standard I like doing for this,
I'll hand it over to you,
is 25% body weight, and I work in like an 8 to 12 rep range, which allows me to find if the weight is too heavy to lower the weight, but if I'm getting enough reps, I can up the weight each week. And you guys would be shocked to find out that 25% body weight is incredibly tough on a tibialis raise for being such a small range of motion movement. It's really challenging, and it's gonna burn the front of your legs a lot.
Connor, you just mentioned your tibialis being that first point in your lower body of when you're jumping. It's that first point that actually has that force being applied to it. So do you want to demonstrate in front of the camera how that works?
Correct. So let's say I'm going to go into a jump and spring forward. The ankle of the leg that pushes into the ground first is like this. So if let's say I'm not strong here, I'm just probably going to fall forward. My knee might get a lot of pain and I won't be able to exert enough effort to jump up. The decelerating is equally as important as the accelerating in a movement. So that's why I like pairing what we're going to show next with the tibialis raise. So a good combo and pairing I like to do with the tibialis raise is a calf raise variation. And a lot of people may already be familiar with the straight leg calf raise, but often undertrained is a bent knee calf raise version, which is going to strengthen the soleus and the Achilles tendon.
For people who don't know, can you point out on your own leg where that is?
Yeah, so with the bent knee calf raise, it's right below the belly of the calf, and the Achilles tendon is what wraps around it. Okay. So it's going to strengthen those areas of the calf, which is pound for pound one of the strongest tendons and muscles in the human body. And a good standard I like to use for that is maybe 25% body weight single leg, similar rep range, 8 to 12 reps. And similarly to the tibialis raise, it's a shorter range of motion, but it's incredibly difficult when you go up in weight and start using like a measurable metric for this movement.
Good, and obviously if this is causing you pain, you just lessen the weight.
Exactly.
You can also lessen your knee bend as well,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So you could use less knee bend or less weight, and once you progress, you could use more knee bend and more weight.
Perfect.
To make it more challenging. So now is when we get into the more meat and potatoes exercises in the training. When a lot of people think of jumping, they probably think of doing squats and RDLs. But how we do squats is differently from a lot of other ways you train. The main reason we use the squats is because opposite of a jump, which is high and fast, we can do low and slow intent with the squat. So I personally don't use as much weight as most people might because I squat, because I also go way lower and way slower.
So what tempo are you working with when you do these?
So I try and go for at least 5 seconds on the way down and try and not bounce out of the bottom, trying to get that unavoidable tension in the squat. So I'll show you a quick demo of what that looks like. With the squat, I'll try and go for like a set of 3 reps, but going as slow as I can and getting as much coverage, almost to the point where I can't go any lower, and then come back up. So I think if you can get to your body weight on this, you have a pretty good standard of knee strength, but also ability to explode and jump higher. So one last rep. Slow on the way down. Pause. And then up. And that's, I'd say, probably the exercise that has benefited me most for jumping, just being able to master that ability at that tempo.
When you first started, obviously you weren't using this weight. So how did you start, and then how fast did you progress from using nothing or using light weight to this weight right here?
Yeah, so even before using weight, just using your own body weight, also with a slant board does a great job. You could start with your hands out as counterbalance. And then as you get better, you can hold weight in the front. Then you could go to bar and back with just an empty bar and then load up the weight. Also, what I think works really well, and that I should mention in this video, is the split squat does a good job unilaterally training one leg at a time. So if you have any imbalances, this is actually what I'd recommend instead of the squat, because you want to master those imbalances before you go to a double-legged movement. And the split squat also progresses and regresses with front foot elevation. So if it is any challenging at all, you can elevate your front foot, also use more or less weight to progress the movement.
Perfect.
So after the squat, another measurement and exercise I use to train behind the knee is an RDL, because equally important to training the quads is a movement that strengthens the posterior chain. The RDL and posterior chain gives you the potential to improve your athleticism and how you can jump. So a movement like the RDL strengthens and lengthens the glutes, the low back, and the hamstrings, all behind the knee. But equally important, and similarly to how I showed you the split squats, doing something like a Nordic trains the knee flexion while this trains hip extension. If you can do both of those in a workout or across the week, you build great ability behind the knee to build that explosiveness that you need to jump higher.
And what weight are you looking to work with when you do an exercise like this?
So similar to last week's video on structural balance, I try and keep the numbers fairly similar, just because I don't want to progress too much in one exercise. For example, for me, my RDL is a lot better than my squat currently, which is something I have to work on. So I'm not going as high in the RDL right now because I need to catch up with my squat. So I'm balancing those out, which is also why I really enjoy using our structural balance app. It keeps me accountable to making sure I use proper weights and not progressing too quickly on certain movements that I'm already good at.
Makes sense.
We improved our pain-free ability, and we're building from the ground up with training the front, back of the leg, then to the quads and the hamstrings. Now we're going to address strengthening the area that picks up those legs, which is the core with the gar hammer raises. With these, it does a really good job strengthening your hip flexors, which are very underlooked, but also when you do that stride, when you jump, you're lengthening your hip flexors. So we want to be strong there too. And what I like doing here is sets of 20, kind of exploding. You don't need to add weight here, but going at a good tempo where you're strengthening the core and building the hip flexors. I wouldn't say it's like a main lift I use, it's more of an accessory, but it does a good job kind of rounding out having full structural balance when you train, as well as having the ability to pick up your legs when you run or jump.
Exactly. I was going to mention, for jumping, obviously it's important, but for running, it's really, really important.
Absolutely.
You see sprinters, Usain Bolt, all these guys doing gar hammer, hip flexor type lifts, and they do it kind of like you demonstrated right here.
Exactly. And something to mention too is when you're jumping, you're not just standing still and jumping, you're running up into your jump. So there's no reason not to train the area before the jump when you're building up running into your jump, because that's also, if you try and do a standing jump versus a full run up approach jump, obviously for most people the running jump is going to be better. And if we want to improve our ability to run pain-free, strengthening this exercise will help a lot.
It makes total sense. Now, for someone watching this, they may look at these straps and think, this is not something I have access to. So if you don't have access to this, can you do them on this like that?
Absolutely. You could simply just hang from these.
Okay.
The reason I do advocate for getting those, though, is because for a lot of people, the grip might wear out before your hip flexors do. Mm-hmm. I also like, with these, the goal is always getting your knees to your elbows. With this, still good doing it hanging, but you don't really have a measurable distance to reach to. So I find with that, it keeps you honest. Like once you're noticing a decline in your reps, that's where you have to work at.
Perfect.
And then also there's a couple other exercises as well. One that requires zero equipment is an L sit. For a lot of people, it might be challenging to hold their weight off the ground, but just doing one leg at a time, holding the leg up, it's going to strengthen the hip flexors. But what I like about this is the gar hammer raise, or something like a reverse squat, builds the strength through a range of motion. The last and my least favorite exercise, and a lot of people that know me, I do not like training upper body. I used to avoid it altogether, and Drew behind the camera even has footage of me where if I turn sideways, you might not even be able to see me. So I like training the chin-ups because it still gives me the ability to train my upper body, and the arm swing is actually responsible for up to 15% of how high you can jump, which is a crazy amount when you think about it, especially when you're trying to jump super high. An inch or two makes a really big difference. So I'm trying to work to the goal, I'm not there yet, of getting 50% of my body weight for 3 reps. Very ambitious goal for me. But right now I'm just mastering my ability to really explode up on my chin up and come down as slow as I can.
Because right at the bottom, you want a full lockout, complete lockout.
Exactly. Right? Going slow on the way down, lock out, explode up, getting your chest to the bar. And I'm not doing these for super high reps as well. I'm training it similar to the gar hammer raise, more as an accessory. But it's something that I noticed when I even just trained a little bit once a week. I was able to notice significant improvement in how much I could put effort into when I swing my arms. When you look at people trying to jump and dunk, or just try and jump as high as they can, they swing their arms down. That's what this chin-up helps me with the ability to do. There's other movements that you like as well, but I find this to be like the king exercise for training the upper body. And it's something, out of all the upper body exercises I do, it's the one I'm best at.
It's also the most bang for the buck too. Like you mentioned,
Absolutely.
Arms, shoulders, really any portion of the upper body, this exercise works it.
Yeah, so this pretty much rounds out what I use when it comes to training.
Connor, I appreciate you taking us through this workout right here. I do see you in the gym training these exact movements that you showed in the video. And to find the exact sets, reps, and schedule, we actually do have dedicated jump programs within the app that you can sign up at atgonlinecoaching.com.